Hey there. Welcome to episode 356 of Mike's Collection. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today is some brand new Spawn action figures. Now, I'm sure if you're watching this video, you already know who Spawn is, but I kind of can't help myself. I'm going to give you a very quick little recap. So, basically, this guy, Todd McFarlane, was a very famous comic book artist in the late 80s and early 90s working for Marvel. And then I think it was 1992, him and a bunch of other artists left Marvel to form their own company, Image. That way they could create their own characters that they would retain the rights to. Todd McFarlane created the character of Spawn, who was a mercenary named Al Simmons who died, and he sold his soul to the devil to come back as this kind of demonic anti-hero character, big red flowing cape, all that sort of stuff. The character has been published consistently since the 1992 launch. Most of the Image creators sputtered out after a handful of issues, but McFarlane has kept going. Now, mind you, he has handed off art duties and writing duties to other people over the years. But this is probably the best time ever to be a Spawn fan because there are multiple comic books being published now, all under the banner of Spawn Universe. So a lot of the side characters have now got their own titles going. And yeah, they're pretty good. I'm currently buying like all the Spawn books and pretty good stuff. Anyway, pretty early in, like after the launch of Spawn in 92, there was a lot of interest, and they made a live action movie pretty early on into the character's history. They made an animated series on HBO, and a lot of toy companies came knocking at Todd's door saying, "We want to make action figures of your character." And apparently he wasn't thrilled with what they were pitching, so he said, "I'm just going to make these action figures myself." And everybody told him he was crazy, in the same way they told him he was crazy when he left Marvel to start his own comic book company. But he left, and he started Todd's Toys, which later became McFarlane Toys, and it's been a huge success. Now, initially, he did just create toys of his Spawn characters, and also some toys of some of the other characters created by Image and like his fellow co-owners of Image, so some other characters like Shadowhawk and Savage Dragon and whatnot. But after McFarlane Toys had been around for a couple of years, he started branching off and doing other brands like Walking Dead and Halo and things like that. And a while back, it seemed like Spawn had kind of waned in popularity. The book, I don't think, was selling at very high numbers. The toy line had kind of ran its course. And McFarlane stopped making Spawn figures, which is kind of crazy because the company was formed specifically to make Spawn figures. But for a few years, it was focusing on its licensed properties like Walking Dead. But around 2020, I guess, is when when Todd said, "I really want to bring Spawn back into prominence." So he announced his Spawn Universe initiative in the comic books, and he said, "I'm going to start producing Spawn action figures again." And to gauge the interest, he did a Kickstarter for a new Spawn figure, and that blew up. It was huge. It made millions of dollars, and I backed it, and I got 2 Spawn figures. So this was the Al Simmons Spawn, the original mercenary, and it was a great figure. Now, mind you, it wasn't perfect. It was a little stiff, which is something McFarlane Toys is known for. Its action figures are not really something kids would play with. They're more collectibles, and they're often more like statues than action figures. So I found that Spawn figure was a little rigid. He looks great on a shelf, but you couldn't really play with him in any way. So good figure. It made my best of the year list in 2021 when it came out. And because of the huge success of the Kickstarter, he announced that he was going to do another Kickstarter shortly afterwards. Now, it took a long time to get there, but he launched his second Kickstarter in October of, it might have been October of 2024. Now, the figure that was being made in that crowdfund was the character of Medieval Spawn. So, in the Spawn mythology, very early on, like within the first 10 issues of the comic book, they established that Al was not the first guy to sell his soul to the devil and become a Spawn. There have been spawns throughout history, at all different times, including medieval times. So they did a flashback story where there was this medieval knight who was also a spawn. And we didn't get a whole lot of him. It was just like a single story, and then he kind of popped up a couple more times over the years. But now he's got his own kind of book in the Spawn universe, and he's a lot more prominent character in the Spawn universe. So they have made medieval Spawn action figures. In fact, when the very first wave of Spawn toys came out from Todd Toys back in whatever it was, the very early 90s, Spawn and Medieval Spawn were both in wave 1. So when he made that new Kickstarter Spawn in 2021, he kind of sold it as the ultimate version of that original toy. So it had the same costume design. It was just kind of amped up with more detail, more articulation, more accessories. And so that's what he said he wanted to do with the second Kickstarter, is take that original medieval Spawn figure from the 90s and just turn it up to 11, more details, more articulation, more paint apps, all that sort of stuff. And it looked great. So he launched the Kickstarter, and there was 3 different versions of the figure available. There was one with kind of a blue base, which matched the original toy from the 90s. So of course he would do a blue base, because that would, if he's doing an ultimate version of that toy, it has to look like that toy. But then he also did a version where the base color is black, which I think a lot of people prefer, because I think that's kind of the colors Medieval Spawn was shown to be, red and black, in later appearances, and those are the colors you associate with Spawn. So that was very cool too. And then the other one was a version I was not interested in. It was kind of just a plain, dull, like a flat gray. And the premise behind that figure was that you could paint it yourself. So it was something kind of intended for customizers, which I certainly am not. I really didn't need this flat gray version of a Spawn figure. So I was considering getting the blue or the black. And the Kickstarter came with so many alternate pieces. So you could swap out the heads, swap out the armor, swap out the weapons, that I thought, what, maybe I should buy both, because I can put different heads on them and everything, and they'll look different on my shelf, different enough to justify the purchase of the 2. But I was kind of torn, because McFarlane said to make his life easier, anybody that ordered a 3-pack, he was going to ship out the 3-pack together, and it would be a discounted shipping. But if you bought any other combination, he was going to ship out the figures individually, which would mean increased shipping. So if I bought just the black one and just the blue one, they would ship out in separate shipments with separate tracking numbers, and I probably would have paid like $30 or $40 shipping on each one, rather than if I bought the 3-pack and I paid maybe $50 shipping for all of them combined. So I thought, well, I would save a lot on shipping if I bought the 3-pack, but I really don't want to buy that gray one. And by buying the gray one, it's not like the gray one came free. Each of these figures worked out to be about $100 Canadian where I am. So it's like, am I going to spend $100 to save, $30 on the shipping? I don't know. But pretty late into the campaign, McFarlane announced, instead of a flat, dull gray, we're going to change it so it's got this kind of patina, so it looks like kind of like a pewter statue. And when he showed the images of that, I thought, that looks super cool. In fact, I thought the pewter one almost looked better than the painted ones. So that was an easy decision. I said, I'm getting all 3. So my 3-pack arrived yesterday. I have been eagerly anticipating this. Although, to his credit, that's a very quick turnaround for a crowdfund campaign. I've backed Kickstarters in the past that have taken like a year and a half from when I paid for it to when it arrived. This campaign launched in October, and here it is, the end of February, the beginning of March, that I'm getting my package. And some people got their Spawn figures all the way back in December. So a very, very quick turnaround, like 2 or 3 months, and now it's been a kind of a staggered release. And I feel a little bad for McFarlane or his team, as I regularly visit the Kickstarter page, and it's shut down now because the campaign is over, but backers can still comment, and it is full of so many comments of people freaking out saying, where are my toys, where are my toys, I'm never buying the Spawn again, there's no communication. And to be fair, communication could have been better, But yeah, you got to be patient, people. Like, he said the toys would come, and they're here. So I'm sure everybody will get their toy. So hopefully people calm down and stop freaking out on the message boards. Anyway, so my package arrived the other day. This big box. I was very excited. My plan was to, right after I finished work, I was going to film an unboxing of all 3 boxes. But the day that the box arrived happened to be a day that I was going to a concert right after work. So yesterday, after I finished working, I pretty much had to go right to the stadium. I was there till after midnight, and I wouldn't have had time to do a video. But I was dying to get my hands on these figures. So yesterday, during my work day, I work at home, I opened up 2 of the figures, and I was very impressed. They're very, very cool. But I did save the 3rd one for an unboxing video, which I'm doing here today. So, without any further ado, here is the box. So when they arrived, there was 3 of these stacked on top of one another. And I have seen some people in the comments on the message boards wondering, like, how they're packaged. Are they secure? I'm an open box collector, so I don't really care if my box gets dinged up that much. But some people, again, really freak out about that sort of stuff. So just to reassure those people who might still be waiting for their package, the outer box was really nice, thick cardboard, and it did have protective plastic corners in each of the 4 corners to kind of protect the corners of these boxes. So mine all arrived in good shape. There's no dings or anything like that on the boxes themselves. So yeah, you can see the Spawn McFarlane logo on each box. You can see the Spawn logo on the tape. So let's get into this. It is a pretty impressive presentation. Now, one thing I will say, kind of my first impression, was that the figure seemed a little small. Almost because the box is so big and the presentation is sort of so grand. When you open it up and you see, like, oh, it's just kind of a standard 6-7 inch figure. This seems like a bit of overkill for the box. But it's not a bad thing. I'm actually glad at the size of the figure. I want it to fit in with the rest of my collection. I wouldn't want it to be overly big, and so that it wouldn't fit in with all my other Spawn toys. All right, so here we go. We got another little piece of cardboard on the top, and there you can see the Medieval Spawn helmet. It's in this kind of metallic, reflective etching on the front of the box. So get that out of here. And so all wrapped up in plastic. All right, so there's a better look at the packaging. Again, very cool how the light hits that helmet. It says Medieval Spawn, collectible action figure. On the side, you get Medieval Spawn in that same metallic red. This side, you get like a little logo there. The back, there's nothing on the back. Now, before we move on, I will show you with the other figures. They were a little bit different. So this one here came in the same box, but with a metallic kind of silver chrome. And the other one here, this is just the sleeve. But the other one came with green. So kind of all the colors associated with Spawn. You know, the box is black, his costume is red, green is the color of his powers. So whenever he has energy come out of his hands and stuff, it's all in green. And then he's got a lot of chains and stuff like that, so the silver metal works as well. All right, so as you've seen with the other ones, this here is just a sleeve that slides off of there. So we can pull that off. You get this big old, pretty thick box inside there. Now there's no color to that, but it does have a nice, you can feel that texture of the sword with the Spawn logo. It's like the sword and the shield. You get that on the front and the back. No other, nothing else on the box really. And you get this handy little piece of cloth to help you open the packaging. Oops. I'm about to lose my certificate of authenticity, which is popping out here. So yeah, you get this little certificate. Another little piece of protective plastic. Now, I don't want things to come tumbling out of here, but you can see you've got the figure on one side and all of the extra weapons here on the other side. So yeah, there's a ton of different weapons, different heads, different hands, all kinds of cool stuff. So the presentation on all my figures looked just like this, except the 3-pack came with this special autographed little, I don't know if I call it a plaque, but this little thing here, that's Todd McFarlane's actual signature on there in like gold ink. So you only get one of those with your 3-pack. So with my other 2 sets, there was nothing there. So that's pretty cool. So then how this works is you take this plastic tray off of there, and then you can peel all those weapons out of the foam. This here, you lift this foam piece out. And once you do that, then the action figure comes in this plastic clamshell. So this is one of the ones that I already opened. So these things are open, and you can reseal them. So these things, you just kind of pop them open like so. So it kind of opens up like a book. Take this backer piece out, and then the figure was in there. So we'll take a look at the other guy here once I open them up. But inside the box, you get what I thought was going to be a reprint of a comic book, which I thought was going to be Medieval Spawn's first appearance, because that's what we got with the initial Spawn Kickstarter. It was a reprint of Spawn issue 1, the first appearance of the Al Simmons Spawn, but it had a nice kind of chrome cover, kind of like what you're seeing here. Now I will say the chrome covers here, they all match the chrome on the boxes. So this one here has got the silver or the green, but I also have this same comic book with red and with silver to match my other boxes. So inside the comic book, you get the artwork directly from that first issue of Spawn, which I think so it was Spawn issue 9, page 2. But then instead of reprinting the whole comic book, you just get some more artwork of Medieval Spawn from various issues of Spawn. Like this one's from issue 304. So, it really dates, covers the whole span of time for this character. So it's a pretty nice little art book with art by a bunch of different artists. They're all credited here. So McFarlane, Greg Capullo, Brian Haberlin. Some nice kind of painted. Yeah, this is pretty cool. I don't know if I need to show you every page of the art, but just trust me, it's nice stuff in here. I might as well. We're most of the way through it. Then you see some reprints of some covers here. There's an ad for the new Medieval Spawn solo comic book, which is coming soon. Then you get an image of the 3 toys that were available in the Kickstarter. So I have all 3 of them, and we're going to take a closer look at them all. There is a comparison from the new Spawn to the original Spawn from Todd Toys. So you can see it's quite a bit bigger. 1995 apparently was when the original toy came out. I would have been in like grade 11. There's a previous Medieval Spawn figure that Todd has made. Here's another nice picture of this current Spawn that we're looking at. More pictures of the toy. And then some concept sketches of the toy. I think these are concepts for the original 1995 toy. Yeah, so all said and done, so you get that nice little comic book. And then the toy with all the accessories. So I guess we've done the unboxing for the most part. So I'm going to flip things around here, and by that time I will have this guy all opened up, and we'll take a closer look at the action figures. Okay, so here is the blue figure freshly out of the package. So I just opened him up, and I took him and all of his accessories, and I just laid them out here on my desk. So you can see how this figure looks straight out of the box. So there we've got the signature card. We've got a sword with some cool detail. A cool shield that's right out of the comic books. We got an alternate head there that's kind of like a Spartan helmet. Some extra hands. Some more alternate heads. Some helmets and some unhelmeted heads. These pieces here are alternate chest armor. So you can change his breastplate. And you got a big giant sword here with lots of cool little details on it. Another sword. Axe. These pieces here are interchangeable pieces that you can put on his forearms. And he's got another shield there. Some other weapons. This one here has got real metal chain on it. So all of this stuff that you see here, I got this exact same stuff with the other two figures. So I have all of this stuff 3 times over. So there's lots of customization possibilities. Even though I think the base figure is cool in all 3 colors, I don't know if I could have justified the cost of buying this figure if he was just going to look like this on my shelf in a couple of different colors. But the fact that I can change out his head and change out his armor and give one guy a sword and the other guy an axe, because there's no way he can hold all of this stuff. And as cool as some of it is, I'm basically going to give him 2 weapons, and the rest of the stuff is going to go in a box, maybe until the end of time. So by buying this figure 3 times, having all these display options, I can make them all look pretty different on my shelf. But yeah, let's get up close for some of this paint detail here. So you can see how that chainmail is sculpted and how it is painted all over his body. Some really intricate details all along there. Very, very cool. I'm really impressed with these things. So as I mentioned earlier, I opened the 2 other figures yesterday. So that was the one with the black chainmail and the one that's painted to look like a pewter statue. And I was impressed with both of them. Although any issues I might have had with them, the same issues I have with this guy, which we'll talk about in a minute. But this guy did have one extra little bit of disappointment right out of the packaging. I'm not super upset about it necessarily, but so on his back, so you can see he's got this strap, this leather strap that runs across the front of him there. And it's attached to his sheath of his sword. Now you can see there's a little black plug piece that plugs into there. Now that was disconnected, and I've already tried to push it together a couple of times, and it just seems to fall right back out. Because I think it's supposed to be more than just push that into place. It probably requires some glue. So not a big deal. If the glue came loose, I don't think it's actually broken. So I might have to put some glue in there. Although I could be wrong, actually, because I think you probably need to get the sheath and strap off of him in order to change out his chest armor. So maybe it's meant to be removable. But the fact that it seems very loose and flimsy and easy to come out here is a little discouraging, because it didn't seem to be that easy to come out on my other 2 figures. But again, there's some nice detail. You can see how the buckles and the straps on the back of his helmet all have separate little paint apps. It's really impressive. The detail on here, you got multiple skulls. The cape has got this nice little design along the edge. And even underneath the cape, there's still lots of detail in there. Really nice stuff. So I mentioned issues, and it's not really an issue, but I talked about how with the previous figure, it felt more like a statue than an action figure. Now, years ago, McFarlane wasn't shy about his action figures being statues and not something a kid would play with, because he made toys that were, even though they had some articulation, like there was a Spawn that was sculpted sitting on a throne, and so his legs couldn't bend, so you could never stand that Spawn toy up. So that's not a toy you could have played with. Like, it was stuck in a static pose, even if you could turn his arms and twist his wrists and maybe turn his head. Same as he did another Spawn that was standing with one foot on a pile of skulls, and the leg was permanently bent in that position. So again, you could never play with him or have him, kick somebody. His leg was stuck in that bent pose. And I kind of got out of McFarlane Toys around that time. I really wasn't interested in these pre-posed statues. So I'm glad that he's gotten back into more action figures. But these guys, they're hard to play with. So with the previous Kickstarter one, it had a gigantic cape. And the gigantic cape really hindered how you could handle this thing. Like, maybe if it was a cloth cape or a wired cape or a removable cape, you could, take it off when you wanted to play with it or something. But that cape was it was stuck to the figure, and it was very overwhelming. This one here, I don't think the cape is removable either. It's not as bad, but it's not just the cape with this figure. It's a little bit of everything. So one thing that he sold us on in the Kickstarter campaign, because he would post these little videos about what he was adding to the figure and stuff, and he really touted the interchangeable armor pieces as something cool, and he wanted to make it really easy to do by putting magnets on it. Now, the magnet effect is cool, but again, if I wanted to play with this thing at all, you move his arm up and down, and like this thing just kind of falls off. Like, it doesn't take much to move that. Now, I like that it locks into place with that little magnet and the little piece of metal, so that's cool for a display. I don't have to worry about it falling off while it's on display on my shelf. But again, if you wanted to play with this thing at all, it makes it near impossible to have him throw a punch without knocking the armor off of his arms. And that's the same for both arms. It's just, you move it just a little bit and it comes right off. So again, are these display pieces or are they toys? I know they're supposed to be collector pieces, but again, if I wanted a statue, I'd buy a statue. I want this to be a figure that I can fiddle around with without all of its pieces falling off. So the fact that the magnet pieces are kind of loose, as well as the sheath and strap, you can see it's falling apart again. So hopefully that's not the case with all my figures. I'll probably be leery to undo the strap on my other figures because I don't want it to become loose like this one here. Anyway, he looks cool. I could go on the articulation. He moves well, but again, hard to pose. Like, he has no stiff joints or anything. But anyway, the display base is nice. McFarlane usually gives you a display base with his Spawn and his DC figures, but they're usually just small discs with one foot peg. I like that this is a solid base, so both feet, he's got holes on both feet so they can go on there, and it gives them a nice solid stance. Now, you can see his legs, he can spread them apart there. He's got double jointed knees, so you can kick his knees around. He's got articulated toes. You can point his toes around. So yeah, he moves pretty good. He spins at the kind of a mid-torso. He's got, I think, double jointed elbows. He's got wrists. The head turns a good, up and down, 360, maybe not quite 360. I think I could if I really wanted to wrestle with it, but you can see how the cape there kind of gets in the way a little bit. The shoulders are a little weird, but we've seen these on his other figures, like his DC figures. He's got this kind of floating piece here. I don't know if you can really see it, but there's this little ring piece here. I've never seen that on other brands of figures. So this shoulder arm is attached to this weird little ring, which can create a gap between the arm and the torso. So it just kind of floats around there, which can be a little odd and distracting. I don't love it. I think there's a better way he could have done the shoulders on his action figures. But yeah, I really don't see myself moving this thing because I think we've established this is not a toy to be played with. This is something to be posed on your shelf Maybe you can pose it for some action figure photography if that's your thing. But yeah, I think I'm pretty much just going to pick the head, pick the weapons, and then put this guy up on my shelf for display. And it's pretty cool. Now, every one of these figures had the same default settings when I took them out of the packaging, meaning they had all the same parts and all of the same weapons were optional. Now, I've already changed out the heads on my 2 other versions. So here is the metallic pewter version. And so yeah, I think he looks great. I love the look of this metallic paint. This is so much better than the matte gray that they were originally offering. Now I imagine there probably are some customizers out there that are a little bummed by the change because maybe they wanted that flat gray to actually do some customs on. Because it would probably be pretty hard to make a custom out of this. But I think this is a huge improvement. For me personally, I'm really glad they made this change because it makes this figure worth buying. Now, you might think they look pretty similar. I think the only thing I've really changed out about this guy is so I've chosen to give him the kind of standard sword, and then I've given him this big crazy sword with all the skulls carved into it. So that's probably how I'm going to display him on my shelf. I might change out a couple more pieces. But the main difference with him is I've changed out his head. Now, they might look similar because that is basically the helmet design that Medieval Spawn wears in all of his comics. I don't really know how to describe this type of helmet, but where it's got the kind of 2 like wings on the side and then the chainmail over his mouth and nose and on the top. So these are kind of both in that same style. But you can see here, this is the actual metallic version of that head. So I've taken that off. And what I've given him is, this is what Spawn looks like with his helmet on. They call it his hamburger head. So basically he's a burnt up corpse, almost like a zombie face. So you can plop this head on his neck and give him that face. But then what's cool is he's got this helmet. So again, these are the accessories for this figure. And this helmet here is soft goods. So you can see how rubbery it is. And you can slide that over top of him so that he has an unmasked head. And you can take that on and off. And the eyes will line up with the holes in it. So you'll see his green eyes through the holes. I don't really want to push that in there right now because I don't want to get the head stuck in the helmet. But yeah, that's pretty cool. So that's what I've done here. Now, unfortunately, you don't get the green eye effect on this version, but I do have the soft helmet, and you just take that right off, and there he's got the hamburger head underneath, and that looks great. So yeah, if I only had one of these figures in my collection, I don't know why you would pick this head over this one, to be honest. Like, sure, this one is a little bit more true to the comic book, but this one is close enough. And unless you're the type of person that wants to constantly go into his bin of spare parts to change out the head and all that stuff, I like that it just takes 2 seconds to say, look, there's Spawn without his helmet on, and there he is with the helmet on. So I think it's very cool. And oftentimes with these removable helmets, you know, if you get a Star Wars figure or something with a removable helmet, they're very oversized and they don't really look believable. This works really well. I think the head is a good size. It doesn't look like he has a little pea head when you take the helmet off, but he also doesn't look like he has a big giant melon when you put the helmet on. It's a good scale. They've done that very well. And I think that's partly because they use the soft rubber. If they had tried to give you a hard helmet to put over the head, I think that would have forced it to be a little oversized. So this was a good call. So I think that looks great. Now let me slide these guys out of the way for a second, and I'm going to bring out the third figure. So this is the one with the black base. And I think the black looks really sharp. I think if I could only have one of these in my collection, I think I would probably go with the black. It's just the most Spawn-like to me. So even though the blue is like more true to the original Medieval Spawn toy, it just never looked as good, I don't think. And even though this is super cool, I don't think I would want that to be my only representation of the character. It's kind of a cool variant, but I'm glad I have a standard color one on my shelf. So you can see I've gone with a different helmet for him. He's got this, covers his full face. It's got these kind of little wings on the side. And what I like about this helmet is you pull back on these little wings here, and the front lifts up. So it creates this little shield. And he's got his little hamburger head underneath. Now, the helmet's not fully removable, so you don't get his full hamburger head, but you get the face there. And I think that's pretty cool. So, as it stands, I've got one with the full helmet, one with the removable helmet, and one with a revealable face. So that same helmet came with the blue version, and I think it's probably identical to... Oh, sorry, this is the chrome one. Yeah, so that's the one if you wanted to put with the metallic version. So he's got the metallic face underneath. It's a little hard to recognize the difference between the metal version and the non-metal version. But yeah, so this version here, this is the one that came with the blue spawn. And if I pop that open, you see the face underneath. So I think that's the exact same pieces I've got here. Many of the pieces are the exact same. I don't think they really bothered to give us a paint variation or anything from the blue to the black version. So like this guy here, you see I've got him displayed with this big axe. So it's got the red blades with kind of the gold center and the kind of silver edges. So I've got that same axe here that came with the blue spawn, and it appears to be identical. So like this is such a cool weapon, but I associate a sword more with Medieval Spawn. So I'm glad that I have multiple figures so I can display one of them with the sword and another one with the axe. Oh, and I just dropped it, but like the little end of the axe just fell off there. I'll have to crawl around to my floor later to dig it up. But all of the weapons have a similar thing there. So like this axe is a different axe. You see it's got this blade, this kind of spiky thing on the end there with the Spawn logo. So all these things on the ends of the weapons come off. Now, I don't want to say that and now break it. This one doesn't seem to want to come off. But let's see. This one here. Is this going to come off? All right, I'm a liar, I guess. I think with the other figures, with like the patina metal figures, the little ends came off all the vehicle or all the weapons very easily. So I thought that was a feature because it's a little hard to get some of these weapons into their tight hands, especially when they have that big kind of spiky piece at the end, like you're seeing there. So by taking the little thing at the end off the ball, you can slide the shaft down into his hand. So I thought that was a feature, but yeah, these ones here they're in here pretty tight. These things don't seem to want to come out, so I'm not gonna mess with them. But yeah, very very cool. Now, additional changes that I will probably make. I was reluctant to change out the chest armor because I didn't want to mess with the strap. But since the blue guy's strap is already fallen off, I think I can change out his chest piece fairly easily. So let's do that. The other options we have are this all kind of silver with some gold on it. So we can put that on there. Or this is the one which I think I'll go with, which is a big skull. And also, you see to hold his cape on, he's got those two skulls. Now, I don't know what you call those things, but he has an alternate one of those. So each one of these figures has one with the skulls, and then there's also one with the little Spawn logo instead of the skulls. So that's another quick little customization I can do here. I think you have to take this thing out in order to change out the chest. So let's see here. Okay, so you take that out. Oh, look at the cape. I think that answers our question. The cape is removable. You can take that off if you want. So I'm going to remove that chest piece. Put that one on. And then we'll put these in place. There you go. That was pretty quick and easy. And that adds a little bit more of a difference between these two spawns here. You know, you might not notice it if you're just passing by, but now I know that he's got little spawn logos on his cape where this guy has skulls, and this guy's got the skull logo on his chest where this guy does not. So I also have to decide which weapons I'm going to pair with this guy. So this guy, I've given him the axe, and I've given him the chained weapon. This guy here, I've given the two swords. So this one here, I could maybe give him some of these other weapons that I haven't utilized yet. So he'll display differently on my shelf. Lots of options. And another thing I think we're going to do with this guy is change out the head. So the other head options that I have the unmasked screaming head, which is okay. I don't mind that. But the fact that, you know, I have all these guys, I'm going to have all these dudes on my shelf. And if anybody wants to come over and look at them, some of the first things I'll probably show them are this guy's helmet flips up and you can see his hamburger head. This guy's helmet comes off so you can see his hamburger head. I don't really feel the need to have the third one displayed with a hamburger head. So I think I'm going to display him with the Spartan head, which I think is very cool. Although I will say that when I opened these two figures up and I swapped out their heads, the first head I tried to put on both of them was the Spartan head. So here are the Spartan heads I have came with the black one, which I think is probably identical to the one that came with the blue. But then I also have the fully chrome one as well. So yeah, I tried to put these heads on those figures, and I just could not get the ball to lock into place. It just kept rattling around and just kept falling off. So I didn't have trouble with the other heads. So I don't know if maybe there's an issue with the molding on the Spartan head. I hope not, because it's really, really cool. And I do think I want to display this guy on my shelf with the Spartan head going forward. So if I do that, I might have to take the hair dryer to this to maybe loosen it up, or maybe I'll have to put a little bit of stick tack on there to hold it in place. I don't know, but I definitely want to make use of the Spartan head because I think it's very cool. Another thing that I will maybe do for this guy is give him this shield, because this shield is right from the comic books, and I really like the look of it. It's very cool. Although you'll see with the one in black, I've given him this big crazy shield because that was just too good to let go to waste. So I've got 3 of those shields. I had to make sure somebody had it. But in order to use the shield, you kind of have to take off the armor of that particular forearm, because the way the shields work, you'll see there is magnet piece there, so that connects to the magnet on the forearm, and these just unplug. So you slide the forearm into there, attach it to the magnet, but that way you can't have the armor. So, which is kind of too bad, because so this guy has no armor on his forearm. This guy, I think I'm going to keep him with this double skull one that came right in the packaging. But I do love this one here with the long kind of hook on the front and all the spikes. This is kind of more like the Al Simmons spawn. But I really like the way this looks. So let's see if we can put that on there. Maybe I'll put that on this side, and maybe to change things up, maybe I'll give him the shield on his other arm. So yeah, again, you can see how much variety there is when you start swapping out pieces. All these guys look great. I don't know if there's much more to say, though, to be honest. I think we've looked at all of the pieces, at least to some degree. You know, all the weapons are cool. More weapons than I will ever need. Maybe before we go, I can do one quick comparison to the Medieval Spawn that was released like a year or two ago. Now, I thought that was a pretty good figure, but he was about $30, where these guys were like $100. So we should definitely see a difference as far as the quality and the details, and I'm sure that we will. So here are the two Medieval Spawns. And yeah, I think it's pretty obvious right from the get-go. This is not a bad figure. Like, this was a regular retail release. He's got good articulation or whatever, right down to the, toe movement. But like, when you look at all this armor pieces, like, look at that skull. That whole piece is just cast in silver plastic with no paint apps, no paint wash. His chainmail, even though he's got that chainmail sculpt, there's no paint on it. The back, like, there's all that sculpting in the skirt piece. All those little details could have been different colors, but they're not. Even his helmet there. Like, if this was a Kickstarter figure, I'm sure all these little details would be painted gold on top of the silver. We'd see every little rivet painted. So yeah, if you really like Medieval Spawn and you can't find or can't afford these Kickstarter figures, that's a decent alternative. But yeah, I really don't think there's any comparison as far as the level of detail, the amount of accessories. These things really are awesome. And I expected that to be the case. I'll be honest, I was a little surprised when they announced they were going to do a Kickstarter for Medieval Spawn, and then they put out this Medieval Spawn in the meantime. I was like, are they kicking themselves on the foot because people don't want a Medieval Spawn? Well, we'll have this guy now, and maybe they don't need the Kickstarter one. But yeah, it's not even really a comparison. This thing here is in a league of its own. Great figure. Yeah, I'm very happy with these things. Oh, and before I go, I picked up that little piece that I dropped. And yeah, I'm pretty sure they are supposed to be removable. So you can see how that comes out of the peg like that. So that makes this much easier to slide into his hand than if you had that ball at the end. So it's probably a good sign that they don't come out easily, but I'm pretty sure that is a function of all the weapons, is that you can take the little balls off of the end. Anyway, that's all I've got to say about these guys. Okay, so that was my review of the new McFarlane Toys Kickstarter Medieval Spawn figures. I think they're pretty cool. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave me comments below. Share the video, tell your friends. It all helps the channel, and it's all very much appreciated. Anyway, that's it for now. I'll see you next time.